Right, okay, let's do another one. Hey, let's on a roll here. So, I'm going to continue with Weimar. Not with Weimar, I'm going to continue with the rise of Hitler. Here we go. So, again, I'm going to focus on the knowledge questions from there. So, here are the kind of why questions on this Hitler's rise to power, week 17. So, what was the early appeal of the Nazi Party? Why did the Munich Putsch fail? Why did the support for the Nazis grow between 1929 and 32? And the very confusing question about why Hitler managed to become Chancellor in 33. So just a basic reminder here. So the Nazi, or the DAP, or the German Workers' Party, was set up by a guy called Anton Drexler in 1919, so pretty much straight after the end of World War One. Hitler was sent in as a kind of spy to kind of observe their meetings and became kind of engaged with the party and actually became its deputy leader. And he suggested a new name, which became known as the German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party, the National Socialist German Workers' Party. And by 1921, he became his leader. And so by this stage, like Rudolf Hess, Goering, Röhm were quite early supporters and friends of Hitler. And all of those people are important later. Um, the other thing why they were appealing is they had a pretty clear programme right from the start. So 25 points, which I suppose is quite a lot for a party. So it was written in 1920, but its three basic things were: we are totally opposed to the Treaty of Versailles and everything that it stands for. Secondly, we don't want Jews to be part of citizens of Germany. And thirdly, this idea of Lebensraum, which means living space, living room. So Germany needs to expand. This is something it did during the Second World War. Thirdly was the SA. So the SA were unemployed ex-soldiers who were under the command of Rome, and their nickname was the Brown Shirts because that was the colour of their uniform. And their main job was kind of disrupt the communists and kind of intimidate people with their violence. And they became quite a useful vehicle for Hitler and the Nazis initially. So on to the second question. Why did the Munich Putsch fail? So let's just remind ourselves. So why did Hitler feel that 1923 was the time for him to take over the government? So first of all, people were unhappy about the Treaty of Versailles and everything that stood for. Also, Mussolini in Italy had gained power, fascist, right wing, so that inspired him. And obviously, everyone was affected by hyperinflation and wanted a change of government. So, on the 8th of November 1923, Hitler famously entered a beer hall, fired his gun, arrested various members of the Bavarian government, von Kahr and people like that, and he took over the army and police headquarters. So on the 9th of November, he took an armed group and marched to the centre of Munich. However, they were stopped in the street by the police, and the army had come in from out of town, and the shots were fired, quite a few people were killed, and Hitler and his supporters were arrested. So all in all, basically, a bit of a disaster for Hitler. So that's my wife again. Let's turn her off. God, I need to put my phone on silent. So things that obviously didn't go well was he was imprisoned, the Nazi Party was banned, and it showed really the lack of support, for the Nazi Party. They were relatively popular in Bavaria, but it showed as a national party they weren't well known. But you can see from that picture that he used his trial to increase his profile. So he was a very strong speaker. So before the trial, nobody had really heard of him outside of Bavaria. After the trial, people in Berlin and Frankfurt and various German cities knew who this guy was. Just look at that picture there, of him in prison. It's the kind of thing you'd probably put on Instagram today, longingly looking out the window like a trapped tiger, with a smart suit, some kind of destiny photo there. Second thing, when he was in prison, it's not like a prison we would think of. It was quite comfortable. His friends came and went. He wrote Mein Kampf, his book, where he sort of laid out his ideas. So he had some thinking time, which was amazing. He also, and probably most importantly, made him realise, I don't think violence is going to work. People don't respond well to that. How can we get people to vote for our party? So the Munich Putsch was a failure, but in the long term was probably one of the seeds of his success. Okay, third, probably the exam board favourite and the most easiest question, I think. Why did the Nazi Party grow in support between 1929 and 1932? So it's quite complicated, but relatively uh, focused on 3 points. So the number one reason is obviously the Wall Street crash. So stock market crashed. The US pretty much overnight stopped lending and clearly wanted their billions of dollars back that had been lent to the Germans. So businesses, Mercedes, BMW, all these huge businesses could not get any money from anywhere. So the only logical way for them to continue as a business was to dramatically reduce their workforce and reduce their wage payments. Also, the government couldn't borrow from the Americans, and so they had to reduce wages of teachers and government employees and reduce benefits for people. All of these things led to unemployment and desperate poverty, not just in Germany, but all over the world. And during desperate times, people become desperate, so the support for both the Nazis and the communists grew. The second thing why he grew in support was the appeal of Hitler himself. He had a very strong image as a strong man, as you can see from that poster there. Him and the party travelled around Germany. He was one of the first politicians in the world to do this. He went on planes and flew all around various cities, and people recognised him, heard him speak. And he was a fantastic orator. Clear, well-spoken, engaging. That's what people want. You can imagine if all your assemblies had fantastic orators, what a difference that would make. Lastly, propaganda. So whether that was radio, posters, or whatever. So what they began to do was we are going to have a clear and simple message. Okay, so think about the Brexit Party. Our message is, we're going to make Brexit happen. Vote for us. People want simple messages. So they said to businesses, right, we're going to solve the economic crisis. They said to the working class, okay, we're going to give you work and food. They said to the middle classes, we're going to protect you from those communists who are going to take in and take away your houses. We're going to say to the farmers, we're going to protect your land for the communists and stop them taking it over. They also appealed to young people who thought it was exciting, the uniforms and all those types of things. And probably importantly, lastly, they also appealed to women who felt threatened by these kind of difficult economic times. We're going to protect your family and your children. So in some ways, they were very clever and articulate as a political party and very persuasive. So this is the most complicated, the last question. Why did Hitler become Chancellor? So really, it's all down to politics. And I'm just going to go through this quite slowly because it's complicated. So there was a series of elections. So in May 1932, there was elections for president. Hindenburg, you can see in the photo there, famous ex-general, but way in his 80s, like 88, something like that. He still was pretty healthy. But he was elected. Now, so what he wanted, he appointed his first chancellor, this guy called Brüning. Now, Brüning was really concerned about the increasing influence of the Nazis, so he decided to ban the SA, and in order to help the unemployed, he wanted to buy up some land and give them land to farm. Now, this was incredibly unpopular, particularly among the wealthy. So Brüning's already alienated and angered the Nazis and the rich. So Hindenburg, not stupid, decided to replace him by this guy called von Papen. And he decided in order to kind of maintain power, they needed to have a coalition with the right wing and the Nazis. But Hitler would only agree to that if the ban on the SA was reversed, and that's what happened. So July 1932, there was more elections, absolute chaos on the streets, fighting between the communists and the SA, and the Nazi share of vote in the Reichstag increased to 38%. Absolutely massive majority there. So Hitler banged on Hindenburg's door and said, make me Chancellor. But Hindenburg, famously said, I'm a field marshal, I'm not going to deal with this jumped up corporal. Didn't want to be told what to do by Hitler. So there's further elections because so much infighting, not just on the streets, but also in the parliament. So in November and December, there's more elections. So this guy called von Schleicher, who was a close friend and ally of Hindenburg, was an army general in charge of the army. He warned Hindenburg that if von Papen continued as chancellor, that the whole of Germany was going to go to a civil war. So get rid of him, make me chancellor. Great idea, boss. So Hindenburg went for it. However, it became very clear that he was a military man. He didn't have any popular support at all. And he turned to Hindenburg and said, right, make me head of a military dictatorship. Hindenburg obviously realised that's not what Germany needed or wanted at that time. So von Papen, obviously sort of a bit of a schemester here, decided to jump in, and he suggested, I know, Hindenburg, why don't we make Hitler Chancellor? We get the Nazi support, and if you make me Vice Chancellor, I can control him. Now, obviously, with hindsight, that was a terrible idea, but that is the reason why Hitler became Chancellor. From that famous photo there, shaking the hand of Hindenburg, was politicians scheming amongst themselves in order to get hold of power in a pretty complicated and complex environment. So I'm going to try and knock out some more videos later on, maybe towards the end of the week. So I've probably got 2 more left. Okay, thanks a lot.